Hello everyone. Patty balanced a pail of fresh milk on her head and set off for the market. The road stretched before her like a dusty ribbon under the morning sun. Each step sent a tiny shiver through the milk and through her own wild hopes. She had risen before dawn to milk the cows and her arms still ached. But the ache felt sweet because it meant the pail was full and heavy. She walked slowly with her neck straight and her eyes fixed on the horizon. A warm breeze carried the smell of clover and dry earth. Patty breathed it in and let her mind drift away from the rutted path. She saw herself handing the milk to the dairyman and taking the coins in her palm. Those coins would be cool and round and full of promise. She would tuck them into her apron pocket and pat them once for luck. Then she would walk to the poultry yard down by the willow trees. The old woman there sold the finest eggs in the whole valley. Patty imagined picking out 12 perfect brown eggs and cradling them in her basket. She would carry them home and set them under her best hen. That hen was plump and patient and had raised many broods before. In 3 weeks the eggs would crack open and wet little chicks would tumble out. Their eyes would be bright black beads and their beaks would be tiny gold triangles. Patty could almost hear their high soft peeping right now. She would scatter cracked corn and watch them scurry and scratch. They would grow feathers and combs and loud bossy voices. Soon she would have more eggs than she could count. She would sell some and keep some and her little yard would be full of clucking life. The thought made her chest feel light and warm. She shifted the pail on her head and a drop of milk slid down her temple. She wiped it with the back of her hand and smiled. Her daydream stretched further like a cat in a sunny window. With the egg money she would buy a length of green cloth from the traveling peddler. Not dull green like old cabbage but bright green like new spring grass after rain. She would sew it herself by the fire on long winter evenings. The stitches would be small and neat and the skirt would fall just right. She saw herself walking into the village fair with the green skirt swishing around her boots. The other girls would glance over and nudge each other. The young men would stand a little straighter and smooth their hair. One young man with brown eyes and a shy smile might ask her to dance. She would take his hand and feel the rough calluses from his own hard work. They would spin under the lanterns while the fiddle played a quick merry tune. Her skirt would flare out and she would laugh and not care who heard. The whole scene played out in her head like a bright moving picture. She was so deep in the dream that she did not see the loose stone ahead. Her foot came down on its edge and her ankle twisted just a little. The pail wobbled hard and she grabbed at it with both hands. For one breathless second she thought she had saved it. Then the weight shifted and the milk poured out in a thick white sheet. It splashed onto the dirt road and ran into tiny rivers that sank away instantly. The ground drank it up as if it had been waiting all morning for a drink. Patty stared at the empty pail and her mouth fell open. A slow hot blush crept up her neck and covered her whole face. She felt like a fool standing there with milk dust already drying on her fingers. The road back home seemed to stretch twice as far as before. Her feet dragged and the empty pail banged against her knee with every other step. She passed the willow trees and did not even look toward the poultry yard. She passed the neighbor's field and did not wave back when the farmer called out. Her chest felt hollow and her throat was tight and hot. At home she set the pail by the door and sat down hard on the wooden step. Her mother came out and wiped her hands on her apron and just looked at the pail. She did not scold. She just sat down beside Patty and put a warm hand on her shoulder. After a long quiet moment her mother spoke softly. She said, "Dreams are good, but the road needs your eyes more than your hopes do." Those words sank into Patty like water into dry ground. She thought about the eggs and the dress and the dance and felt silly and sad. Then she thought about the morning and the cows waiting in the barn. She thought about the milk that would come tomorrow and the day after that. The dreams were not gone. They were just waiting for her feet to catch up. That night she lay in bed and listened to the crickets outside her window. She did not count chicks or stitch dresses in her mind. She just breathed and let the dark hold her still. The next morning the rooster crowed and Patty got up before the sun again. She walked to the barn with the pail swinging from her hand and her eyes clear and steady. The cows lowed and she pressed her forehead against a warm flank and began to milk. The white stream sang into the pail and the sound filled the quiet barn. This time she walked to market with her chin level and her gaze on the path ahead. She still dreamed, but she held the dreams like a bird in her hand. Not too tight and not too loose. She saw the loose stones and stepped around them. She felt the breeze and smiled without closing her eyes. When she reached the market she sold the milk and put the coins in her pocket. Then she walked to the poultry yard and bought one single warm brown egg. She held it in her palm and felt the weight of something real and fragile. That egg was a beginning that she could actually touch. She carried it home and placed it under the patient hen. And then she waited. She waited with her feet on the ground and her heart open to whatever might hatch.
能以非母语者的身份专注学习到现在，这本身就是很棒的进步。真诚感谢你的观看。如果你觉得本期内容实用，点赞或留言让我知道你的想法，这对我持续创作非常重要。我们下期见。